And I've seen a lot of people incarcerated play the blame game, right? Is this person's fault? Is the government's fault? They gave me too much time. They did this. All of that may be true. But what part did you play? Because you played a part. You made a decision. Even if the decision was to do business with somebody that you knew wasn't a good person to do business with. I've seen corporate people in prison. People, a job you knew that they were being corrupt and you stayed. It was a choice. You saw, you ignored what you saw, right? And I'm not speaking to any situation specifically. I'm just saying that find the ownership in the story, whatever the story may be. And I think that empowers people or us in a way that is unmatched, right? Once you take responsibility and ownership for your part, now you control the narrative. Now you can prevent this from reoccurring and becoming a cycle.
Welcome back. This is Andreea Parc
and Alexa Dumitru.
And this is a Live Again podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real-life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Today, we have the pleasure of having with us TJ Vulcain. She is an author and a women community leader at the Fortune Society. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm so excited to be on Live Again podcast. Also excited to meet Alexa and looking forward to a great conversation.
Sorry, this chat is no longer available. For now, you can ask me questions or to do things.
I get that a lot.
Play music, turn on a connected light, and more.
Alexa, I'm not talking to you.
Sorry, I thought I heard my name.
You did. You heard your name, but
that
I just wasn't referring to you.
Yes, that happens to us.
That's why we can't have one in the house. And that's why I lead and I say my name is like the thing, just so they.
I won't say that.
It's right. It's actually funny.
Okay.
So I would like to mention that we met last year at an event for the formerly incarcerated women, and it was a pleasure to meet you, and that's where we exchanged our books, and that's where I got your amazing book. And I would like to start from the beginning, and I would like to ask you to describe the woman that you were before incarceration and how it is different from the woman you are today.
I'm a completely different person. Some people in my life can't believe it's me. Just to describe who I was before, I was broken, definitely broken, alone, misguided, confused, impoverished. I'm definitely looking for community, that girl who needed love, looking for love, all the wrong places, looking to connect in whatever way that I could. Didn't have family support. My parents had basically abandoned me. I was in foster care. The foster care system had aged out of foster care and was basically idle in urban communities looking for people to support me and connect with me, as I said before. And so kind of led me down a terrible path, which we'll talk more about, but that's kind of how it started, just being alone.
And that's the reason why you're doing the amazing work you're doing today to help people who are in the same position you were back then.
Yeah, I think that lived experience is unique in a way that it positions you in such a way that allows you to see gaps, systematic gaps, and also gaps in programming. Just be able to be that bridge and that voice and that support that most people who don't have lived experience would be able to provide.
I read in your book, and you told me when we met last year, that you gave birth while in prison. Would you talk a little bit how that impacted you physically and emotionally?
To date, I think giving birth to a child behind bars, well, I wasn't actually behind bars, but being transferred to a hospital, and just the process of not having the support system that I should have had as a young girl having a baby is probably the most hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. That period of time is like a fog. It's like your brain kind of like automatically protects itself and protects you. And so I didn't understand my own reality, I think. I think that you just kind of go into survival mode and you go into making like executive decisions. Like, what do I need to do? How can I advocate for myself? At least this is what happened to me. And so I don't think it really hit me. Like, even being sentenced and being pregnant and understanding that I was going to be behind bars when I went into labor, it didn't fully sit with me, especially being under 25, right? We know that the frontal lobe in the brain is not fully developed, but in my practices now, I know that. So you're not even thinking clearly. I don't have the proper guidance and mentorship to help me. So it was just like, when I look back at myself, it's like it was a really sad situation, right? And so I kind of dealt with each moment as they happened, right? I didn't kind of think too much about the future. I didn't dwell too much about what had happened. I just was kind of trying to get through each moment as they came. What I will say is that being pregnant behind bars, I received immense support from the women. Most people think about prisoners as bad people or like, people who don't have empathy. They are the most caring people that you might imagine, right? And so these women helped me get through that time. Like, they gave me advice, they told me who to talk to, they showed me the ropes, right? I'd never been in prison before. And so I'll never forget the women there that were with me. And even up until when I went into labor, they were super supportive, rubbing my back, advocating for me when I couldn't advocate for myself because I was in so much pain. It really humbled me. Right? I was a person who, coming into incarceration, was extremely judgmental. I'd come from a great educational background. Although my parents were dysfunctional, they were of high socioeconomic status. So I went to private schools, and I felt like I had an advantage over those who were inside. But how much smarter could I really have been if I'm in prison with them? And so seeing people who had formerly had substance use challenges, who had domestic violence challenges, and a host of other challenges that we see in that community, they were the ones that I had to lean on, right? They were the ones who helped me through this. And so it really changed my lens on people in general, and understanding that people are not defined by what they've been through, but that it's a reflection of the trauma that has happened.
Yeah, I describe in my book, you're so right. To me, the same. The women in prison helped me tremendously. And I actually dedicated the book to them because they kept me safe, they fed me, and they were... Because somehow I feel that suffering unites us in ways that we cannot see unless we are living the experience.
Absolutely. We became a family. And I also dedicated, it's funny that you say that, I don't know if you got to this, but there's a part in my book at the back, The Woman Inside. There's a bonus chapter. My editor was actually trying to cut it because it's like, oh, it doesn't go with the storyline. And I'm like, I can't forget about those women. Like, this has to be in this book. And I wrote about the beauty of the women. I wrote about how talented they were, how nurturing they were. We went through pain and we went through hardships just like a family would. I've never heard of a family who doesn't have challenges and doesn't have breaks in relationships, and people are not hurtful towards one another because of their own pain, right? So I think, as you said, we created a family-like dynamic as a result of our suffering.
What advice would you give to a pregnant woman that goes through tough challenges?
So what advice I would give to a pregnant woman, an incarcerated woman, or a woman?
Either incarcerated or on the outside, but going through tough times in her life.
Uncertain about the future.
This, I guess I could look at it, this would be something I wish someone would have told me, right? You have a beautiful long life ahead of you, right? You having a baby and having it through tough times is an opportunity for you to personally develop yourself, right? There's nothing that you can't have. There's no one on this earth that is better than you. You simply lack skills. So I'm an advocate for skills, right? If I see someone who walks in a room and they are socially fluent and they're able to connect with people and leaders, I'm looking at that person and I'm saying, what skills don't I have? Not that this person is better than me. And so what resources do I need to get there, right? We're in the information age. We can learn anything we want to learn at the click of a button. And so if I'm pregnant, I would first need to identify what are my needs? Where are my deficits? What is my income? Why is my income this way? It takes a lot of self-awareness, right? It's a lot of hard work, especially like facing you are partly and mostly responsible for your own receipts. And so that was a process that I had to go through while I was incarcerated. Like, okay, I'm here. I can't keep blaming my parents. Yes, they failed me. I can't keep blaming the people that were in my life because I chose them. And so I need to now look at myself and figure out what changes can I make within me to then have a better outcome. And once it took a lot of time because I was young and very wild. I'd gotten into a lot of trouble while I was incarcerated. Ultimately, what I'm saying is that just the desire to grow and to build and to be better is powerful in itself.
So now, please tell us what you're doing currently at the Fortune Society, because you're doing great work.
Well, thank you so much for recognizing that. So I'll just give you a little context. The Fortune Society is very dear to me. I love this Fortune Society. I don't know if many people are blessed as I am to say this, but I started at Fortune as a participant. I was released from federal prison, hadn't really had a job prior to that, living a life of crime for income. And I said I needed to start somewhere. I actually found out about Fortune in the Connections book while I was incarcerated. I don't know if you guys, just for more information, there's a Connections books for those people who don't know, where there's a bunch of community-based organizations that support people in reentry. I picked Fortune because of all of these services that they provided, and because I didn't want to go from this place to that place. Everything was provided under one roof. So I wrote them while I was inside and promptly was written back, which attracted me even more to the organization. Once I was released, I walked in voluntarily, looking for employment, looking for training, looking for whatever opportunity that I could get. They quickly trained me. I remember it being a light bulb moment, like, okay, I don't know any of this. You think that you know how to interview. Oh, I can get a job. I can learn. I can read something real quick. But no, there's a strategy to job searching, to building a career. And so I was able to learn the beginning stages of it and land a job as a customer service representative. And that's where my journey kind of began with Fortune. Fortune calls people like me recidivists. They've kind of changed the meaning into a positive meaning that I'm a returning recidivist. So now I'm an employee of Fortune, and I'm leading a workforce development program for women. And I'm honored to be able to do this work because I was once a participant sitting in those seats. And so I was able to identify gaps. Again, like, okay, I was sitting in a room with a bunch of men. What did I miss in that moment? What could I have gotten that would have helped my own programming? And so because of that insight and because of that lived experience in my reentry, I'm able to create programming now for women to tackle those needs, right? And the program outcomes are amazing. Women are being placed in jobs. There's some participants who I've trained who are now my colleagues. The program is doing amazing. I also have an entrepreneurship sector to the program, and just so proud of the community of women that I've been able to build within the agency. And I can't not talk about the support that I get throughout the agency, right? All the way up to executive leadership. They truly and fervently support my program, and I'm just extremely grateful.
Before we started recording, you were telling us about the latest event that you had this week. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So I started an initiative at Fortune, and I call it Parents' Day. And Parents' Day is a day that we celebrate and support parents who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. This was a system that this is an initiative that I believe was another gap. Yes, we support folks in reentry. Yes, we support people who need education and just even the children, right, of incarcerated parents. There's an organization that I am actually on the advisory board, Children of Promise, New York City, that I work with. We don't support parents, right? So I put together this initiative, which again started 3 years ago. This is our third year. It started just with an idea. Hey, how come we're not celebrating moms? I was really thinking about the moms because I was doing the women's program. And they're like, well, if you do moms, you got to do dads. So I'm like, oh, I really want to do two. So I said, okay, let's celebrate the parents. And so it grew into this amazing idea and sparked this amazing momentum. And I've invited people from different organizations, academia, people in very high leadership who have come back and done interviews and panel discussions, and also internal leadership and also internal staff who are parents, who have parented while being incarcerated. A child of an incarcerated parent was also in this event. And why I thought that was important to include is because children are even more affected than even the parent. People don't understand, which is why I commend you, Alexa, for you to even be a part of this conversation, because it brings awareness to the suffering that you had to endure. You know, it's a big deal. You lost your mom. Right, your mom is seemingly to me now, your best friend. And so you need that support, you need that guidance. And it's almost like not only is she being affected and she feeling lost, you're equally traumatized as well. And so this event is just bringing light to the family dynamic and what incarceration does to a family and how we could properly support, provide resources, and again, celebrate.
Right, because especially going through that experience, prison isn't only a punishment for the person, it's a punishment for the whole family. And everybody's affected, whether you like it or not. Everybody's affected in that person's family. And it's really important to highlight that, because in pop culture and media, we don't see that. We only see the crazy prison stories, the fights, the interesting, juicy true crime. We don't see the real effect. And we're at an event a few years back, and with my mom's book, and we had this mother-daughter come up to us, and the daughter started talking to me that, oh, I love fashion, because we started talking about the fact that I'm a fashion designer, and we started just talking about fashion, and all of a sudden her mother burst into tears when she read my mom's book the cover. She burst into tears. Mm. And she started telling us that her daughter had just been released.
Wow.
And it was affecting her so deeply. And she was so grateful that she had spoken to us. And she had seen the other side, you know? And she had seen what can be after incarceration. And she was telling us that her daughter has her own daughter, and it was just a cycle. And she was so moved. Mm-hmm. And it was really, I mean, seeing it from my perspective, I know my perspective, but I don't see the parents. It's
also another thing that society doesn't know is that so many families are permanently separated. See, I don't know the dynamics of you guys' story, maybe you can share, but a lot of families don't have anyone to take care of that child. So then what happens to that child? The child ends up going into foster care. And then if you are incarcerated for more than 2 or 3 years, your child can be adopted. And so that's a name change, right? And you never able to connect with your child ever again, or maybe until they're 18. And so that's unnecessary. So I'm kind of trying to figure out systematic changes that can happen. Why isn't Administration for Children's Services here in New York City supporting families of incarcerated parents? There's no reason why someone like me who had a 5-year sentence can't get my child back once I'm released. Right? Because reintegration is promising for me had I had that support. So I'm thinking about strategies like maybe a pool of families who would volunteer to say, you know what, I'm willing to take care of this child for X amount of time and assist this mom in reentry, right? We need that kind of family support, and I think is a major, major gap, again, that's overlooked.
Yeah, I think that would be great, but it's really hard. These children are so affected, right? Because when you're under 18 and you literally don't have a choice as a child. I was in the same boat. I literally did not have a choice. Mm-hmm. I went through courts, the whole shebang, and I spoke to community leaders in my area. I spoke to governmental officials. And nobody cared. Nobody cared because I was 16. And who's going to listen to a little 16-year-old girl?
And nobody's out to change the law.
Right. So, and I don't think, so the thing is, where I'm trying to get at here is, as children of incarcerated parents, we fall through the law cracks. There's literally no law to protect us.
Wow.
You go to the closest family member, and if you don't like that,
too bad.
Sorry, there's nothing we can do. Because my father was around, and I wasn't on the best terms with him at the time. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to live with him. So I was forced to go to my grandmother, who I've loved very much, but it wasn't a space for me. I'm very incredibly blessed that I did have family members around me. Don't get me wrong. I'm incredibly blessed.
Yes, you are.
But at the same time, I had other family members, again, incredibly blessed. I had other family members who I could live with, but that wasn't an option. You stay with your dad. If you don't like it, you stay with your grandma. If you don't like it, suck it up. So I can't even imagine what that's like for someone who doesn't have that family.
It's real. It happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important.
Legislation needs to change.
I'm sorry?
Legislation needs to change.
Policy has to change.
Yeah.
This is exactly why I'm going to be an attorney. I want to be an attorney. That is my dream, my goal, the direction where I'm headed. When I tell you we're doing all of this reentry work, we're doing all of this research, we're doing all of this programming, but we're not changing policy. Mass incarceration starts at a policy level, a legislative level. If we don't have the expertise to communicate with lawmakers, what changes are really going to be made? And so my focus is ultimately going to be systematic approaches and supports that we can suggest and advocate for to ultimately decarcerate.
Because we are talking about reentry into society after incarceration, a lot of people don't know how incredibly hard it is to rebuild your life. Because you're doing this fantastic work, I would like to ask you to give people at least one mindset shift that they need to work on to move forward in life.
If I'm speaking to the community of people who have been directly impacted, it's to be real with their mental health condition. There's no way that you've been incarcerated for more than 3 years, or even for some people less than that, and not be cognitively affected. You need mental health support. You need someone to assist you and be a sounding board so you can understand where you are mentally. A lot of times we're so overly confident, oh, I got this, I did that. You might not have this, right? And because you're not self-aware about your own mental state, it can hinder you for years like it did me. Prison is an animalistic environment, especially if you're in a penitentiary like I was. Every day you're waking up to drama and trauma and fights and yelling and cursing and screaming. That takes a toll on you, right? Your environment becomes a part of you. And so, it's just being self-aware to know and understand, like, okay, I've been incarcerated. This is a big, serious thing. This is something I need to take, work through. And also personal development, right? To capacity of it, being self-aware, healing from it, and also being intentional about developing self. For me, there was a problem with the way I was communicating. I didn't understand that I was being extremely aggressive, and people would shy away from me. People didn't want to talk to me, and I didn't understand why. I was left with loneliness, feeling lonely, and I didn't understand what the disconnect was until one of my friends said to me, she was like, "You want to fight me or something?" And I was like, "Fight you? I love you. I love you so much." And she was like, "Well, you talk like you want to fight." And I don't understand. So it was the first time, like, that truth serum, that reflection of myself caused me to pause and say, wait a minute, is this what's happening? Are people receiving me this way? Because in prison, that's how people talk, right? And so I say, like, even to folks who are seeing this and who may have not been incarcerated but has a loved one who has been, we need truth, right? We need help. We need support. We need safety. Right? We need you to say, look, this is what I'm seeing, but change is possible for you, right? So I think it's a community, collective effort.
And you said something before we started recording that I really liked. Awareness, which is something that my mom speaks about a lot. Being aware and the truth serum of where did I go wrong? What are my mistakes? What are those skills that I'm lacking? I really, really like the way that you're bringing light to what needs to change. Not change, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people incarcerated play the blame game, right? Is this person's fault? Is the government's fault? They gave me too much time. They did this. All of that may be true. But what part did you play? Because you played a part. You made a decision. Even if the decision was to do business with somebody that you knew wasn't a good person to do business with. I've seen corporate people in prison people a job you knew that was they were being corrupt and you stayed. It was a choice. You saw, you ignored what you saw, right? And I'm not speaking to any situation specifically. I'm just saying that find the ownership in the story, whatever the story may be. And I think that empowers people or us in a way that is unmatched, right? Once you take responsibility and ownership for your part, now you control the narrative. Now you can prevent this from reoccurring and becoming a cycle. Now you reduce recidivism. Now you're able to create a plan, right? Now you're able to forgive yourself. Now you're able to move on from that experience and then teach others like what you've been through and been able to overcome. So I think that accountability part is like the key to the healing.
Yeah. And also that is part of probably the stigma of formerly incarcerated people.
Definitely.
Because people look at us, she's been in prison. Well, now I took responsibility for what happened, so I'm not letting anyone define me for what I did. Because I took responsibility and now I'm changing lives around me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The stigma, speaking to the stigma that you mentioned, I teach the ladies in my program that you have the power to enforce or remove that stigma, right? People follow your lead when it comes to you. And so if you're shameful, like I used to say, oh my God, I don't want anyone to know I was locked up. And people that recognize me, I'm talking about people who really knew me and lived on a unit with me, they'd be like, oh, that's Tiffany or TJ. And I'll be like, me? I wasn't incarcerated. Completely trying to disassociate. And they're looking at me like, girl, I know you. I know you. You were living with me. What do you mean? And it was because of shame, right? And once I was able to release that shame and say, I don't feel bad about my experience. That happened because I didn't have the best hand, right? I wasn't given the best opportunities. Things happen. I made mistakes. Whatever it is, I'm able to rewrite that narrative. Now look at who I am. Look at where I've been, but look who God has developed me into becoming. And so people are now inspired. People want to hear stories. And the biggest part for me that was healing was releasing that book. Releasing that book was just like, it doesn't matter what you think. This is purpose-driven work. This is a unique wisdom that I've been blessed to deliver to the world. God has positioned me in such a unique way that I'm valuable. Why would I care about you looking down on me because I was in prison? Jesus was in prison.
It doesn't really matter what other people say about us. It's how we view ourselves.
Yes.
That's where the power is.
Yes, I agree.
All right. And now that we're approaching the end, there is a question that is part of every episode, and that is, what is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
One activity that makes me feel more alive? Building programs. Building events, organizing, giving back to this community. I love people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. I feel like we are the underdog, like the forgotten sheep. Those who are immensely bold, have unique minds, and have enormous amount of potential. But they just need some support. And I thrive being that support for those people, being able to be a reflection to them and say, look, this is what I see. This is the greatness in you. You have the capacity to do anything that your heart desires. That is what does it for me. People say I work. I'm a workaholic. But for me, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like purpose. It feels like fun. It feels like a hobby. It's what I was called to do. I wouldn't take anything that has happened to me. I wouldn't take it back.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because everything that happened to us basically puts us on the path that we are right now, and that we have to learn from our mistakes.
Definitely.
Because if we learn, then they're not mistakes. They're just stepping stones.
I always say the past is your school. The past is not full of failure or heartache. It's school. Because you have that experience, you know what not to do. There's nothing wrong with embracing what has happened, as long as you use it strategically to build your future.
Because we did things because we didn't know better. Now that we know better, we do better.
Do better. Yeah. This stuff gets me excited.
TJ, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I will link in the description your book and your information in everything that you're doing for people to get in contact with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and nice to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you too. It's a pleasure.
Our listeners, thank you for listening. For more guests and more conversations, please subscribe and follow us. Thank you. We'll see you next week.